most people don't start thinking about wealth until they feel a little bit behind. But today's guest started thinking about it, well, probably before he could even open up a credit card. So my guest is an 18-year-old who has already interviewed lots of millionaires, and he's also helping teenagers think differently about building wealth and their future. So the question I have is, what does he see that other people might be missing? Our guest today is Saahil Baxi, and he is an 18-year-old TEDx speaker. He's an entrepreneur, and he is the host of Future Millionaires podcast. He interviews thought leaders and business owners, and he uncovers their habits and their money-making strategies to figure out what is it that helped them build their wealth. And he's also on a mission. He's on a mission to help teenagers think differently about their future and to create financial independence. So I can't wait to get started with Saahil. I'm so glad you're here today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Zelda. It is a pleasure and an honor. I'm always about sharing my message and sharing what I do to help the young generation. So thank you, Zelda.
And I think today you might even help us older generations at least figure out what the younger generation is thinking or how they're acting. You never know. But what really got me was you're 18. And it's like most people your age are not thinking, well, how am I going to be building wealth? So what was it that had you start thinking, what is it that had you start thinking in this way?
Absolutely. Great question. So I started out when I was really taking my journey seriously, because I've grown up homeschooled. Me and my sister, we grown up in a household where we didn't believe that the public schooling system was really teaching the necessary skills and habits that can lead, teenagers, so on, to pursue their version of success and really achieve that goal of, being that big name. And so growing up in a household, my dad, he is an amazing businessman, and he already knew before he even had me and my sister that he wanted to homeschool us. And so we've been under his wing, going through the training that he's given us so that we can build those necessary skills up. But my real journey of getting into what I do today didn't start until I was around 16. And I started out doing something, that a lot of people I would say a lot of people are afraid of. And I did cold calling and cold knocking on businesses. And at that time when I was 16, AI was it was still fresh, it was new, and people were still learning about it. So it wasn't exactly very known at the time. But my dad told me, hey, you know what you should do? This is the purpose of this isn't to, create a big booming business, if it does, but we need to get you experienced and we need you to get out of your comfort zone. So that's what I did for the next 2-3 months, consistently going out every day and going out to businesses, talking to the owners, and just to get myself out of that comfort zone. Because at the time, I wasn't very good at communicating, didn't have the, really good conversation skills. So forcing myself out of my comfort zone and meeting these business owners every day for a consistent amount of time, it helped me improve the way I talk to people, the way I communicate. And, if I tried to jump on this podcast today, trying to talk to you, Zelda, if I was still at 16, then I wouldn't be able to, even answer this the way that I am right now. But I did that for, a consistent amount of time over the next couple of months. And that really built the foundation for, getting out my comfort zone and getting experienced and building my communication skills. So then fast forward a little bit, I did it again about around a year later. And this one was purely just to get that habit back and to build that muscle and get back into the training. And this was just purely around seeking rejection so I could eliminate the sting and the emotional sting and the feeling that you get when someone rejects you or tells you no. And that's what my TEDx talk was really about, is the journey, how I did it, and, the outcome and how much it really helped me to again get back into that rhythm of seeking the rejection to eliminate the sting and get myself just to keep training on that because the consistency, this is something that I want to make sure that I really got down.
So
So then, yeah.
let me ask you, I'll back up for a second. You said you were door knocking and you were doing all this cold call. What were you door knocking and cold calling about?
So I did it a couple of times. I did it three specific instances. The first one I was doing for AI tutoring.
Okay.
And so I would be doing like AI consulting, AI tutoring and coaching because again, at the time AI was still
Yes,
pretty new.
brand new.
So
Mhm.
it was, it was a good time to get into that. So that was the first point. The second point was with website designing. And this was the AI tutoring was purely by myself. I had no one else helping me really out with it in a sense of the service I was giving. The second one was websites. My dad and my sister were helping me out a lot with that, and it was actually doing pretty well. But then, we kind of just deviated away from that because it wasn't really something that we wanted to pursue anymore. And, after doing it a couple months more in that area, I did what I was supposed to do, which was just to seek rejection and, get my name out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's how
Yeah.
you learn. Yeah. Figuring out what you do like, what you do want to do, what you don't want to do. Very good. So, was there a time during all of this where you realized I need to think differently about money?
Yes, there was. So going through this, I kind of didn't know what I was really getting out of it because, I was still a beginner. But around money, I think what I was doing, and this kind of helps in a sense of how it helped me think differently about money, is that I needed to get really good at talking to people.
Okay.
Because the sort of business that I'm getting into right now, communication and coming across in a way that doesn't make the customer or the client run away from you, but rather come to you. I think me going through the communication training and learning how to talk to people and sort of adapting because everyone's different,
Yeah.
so you have to sort of adapt to their styles, the way they talk, the way they come across, and their personality. So in a way, for me, in the area that I'm getting into, you need to be really good at talking to people and doing it effectively, or else, you know, people won't give you the time and people won't give you the service that you're looking for.
So, you're learning something that's hard for a lot of people, which is learn how the client wants you to communicate so that you can communicate it's like, do you want me to text you? Do you want me to call you? Do you want me to use Slack? How do you want to communicate? And you're learning how to do that, which is brilliant because people, even my age, they're like, I'm not sure which gen it is, the millennials, they don't want to communicate except for the way they want to communicate. And I'm like, you got to communicate the way your customer wants you to communicate.
Exactly, Zelda. Exactly. And it's unfortunate, but for someone, for the time that we are in, the communication styles, you sort of have to build that skill because no one is going to learn something or change for you.
Right.
And that's a tough reality, but you just have to learn how to navigate through that. No one is going to change for you. No one's going to be comfortable for you. Or no one's going to talk in a way that you are comfortable because
That's right.
a lot of this is uncomfortable. So you just have to learn to adapt to it.
Speaking of adapting, so you were homeschooled. I know several people who have been homeschooled, quite a few actually. And so I'm wondering, how has that shaped how you think about success and opportunities?
So it's very different. I don't know any sort of experience of being in public school, but I have some friends who are in school, and it brings a lot of freedom to me being homeschooled knowing that, I don't have to wake up super early like high schoolers do. And they're constantly under stress and burnout because a lot of them, they don't even want to be in school. A lot of them are dreading it. A lot of them hate it. They don't want to do the work. They procrastinate a lot. And for me, I am very lucky because I've seen around me how it's affected, my peers and my friends. And so having that in mind, I really am grateful for the position that I'm in because the way I viewed success and the way I've viewed these opportunities is like it's given me a lot of freedom. I get to walk down a path that I want. I don't have to be confined to a specific sort of schedule. I get to plan out my day. I get to plan out my calendar. I get to choose where I want to go and where I want to succeed because I'm at the freedom of my own space here in my room and my own house, especially with my family as well, who are all working together as a family towards the same goal. So being homeschooled my entire life has opened up so many doors and it's made it, a lot more freeing being in this position.
Well, you've come from a very interesting background that's given you a good solid foundation there. So I'm going to transition a little bit talking about these millionaires that you interview. So you got into podcasting and now you interview really high level entrepreneurs, business leaders. What is the one belief that they seem to all share? What is something they all seem to have in common?
That is a great question, Zelda. I think and a lot of these millionaires, and this is sort of just to paint the sort of picture that these people were growing up in. And that's because a lot of them were growing up in really dark times. Some of them, they had to, really hustle early on because that's the ethic that they knew growing up, that you just have to get at it every single day and work really hard. Another one was recovering from, he's worth over $25 million, but he was recovering from, you know, and I'm saying this sort of just because it is out there. So it's not like I'm sharing very private information, but, he was in not a great space. He was not hanging around a lot of great people. And there were, substances involved that were not healthy.
Right.
But obviously, if you go and listen to him and you see him, his name is Chad Lubin. He's worth over $25 million now. And again, it's just to sort of paint the picture that they didn't grow up in very fortunate backgrounds, that they were blessed as soon as they were born. No, they had to work and they had to do things that were very uncomfortable to change the direction that they wanted to go in life. But a belief that they all seem to sort of have in common is that they just never stop. They never stop working towards their goal. They never, having the belief in themselves, and especially creating a support system around them, creating a community of people that help elevate them. Because, when they grew up, a lot of them don't have that sort of space. But but as soon as they start getting onto that track of achieving success, they want to surround themselves with people who elevate them and bring them up and not bring them down. So having the belief in themselves, having a community that believes in them as well, and they never stop doing what they do. And I say that last part, never stop doing what they do, because I know when it comes to the young generation, and that's why I'm really passionate about this, because it's not natural. It's not a natural skill, and it's not a natural habit for them to really go out and do the thing that they want to do. Of course, they feel a lot of fear. They feel like they can't do it. They don't feel like they're good enough. And because of the self-talk in their head, and self-talk is, a huge topic I love, but, they talk to themselves badly, negatively, and it prevents them from moving forward. And that's
People
why
beat
having that
themselves up
belief.
a lot, don't they?
They really do. They really do.
I had this conversation with a friend this morning and she was beating herself up over something that happened over the weekend. And I'm like, you're human. Move on. It's
Exactly.
okay. You don't have to beat yourself up. We all make mistakes and that's where we learn them from. So what surprised you the most about how millionaires actually think?
About how millionaires actually think. And it's really interesting because having the opportunity, being on this podcast, it gave me a lot of opportunities to see the way that they move and the way that they think. And so I think with knowing that their mindset and sort of picking at their brain a little, a lot of them surround their success, or a lot of their success comes from really consistent habits. And, that's a huge thing.
Common habits that they did?
Yes. So a common habit that a lot of them did was putting a sort of like a vision board, writing it down. A lot of them, write down
Journaling.
their goals, journaling, writing down their goals, writing down, what they want, what they aspire to be, what they want to accomplish. And there's just one specific version of this vision boarding and journaling. I really liked how he was doing it just because it felt that it had a lot of power in it. And it's something that when you wake up, that's the first thing you see in the morning. His name is Max Lewis, and he's a multi-millionaire at 30, or he came in his mid 20s, early 20s. But his way of doing this specific habit was that he had like a whole whiteboard in his bedroom, and he would write down whatever he would write down, his goals, his dreams, his visions, and what he wanted to accomplish and what he was going to do to make it work. And sort of affirmations a part of it as well. But he puts it right in front of his bed, so that when he wakes up, the first thing in the morning that he sees is his whiteboard with the written affirmations and dreams that he wants to accomplish. And that was probably my favorite version of that habit, which is it's physical, it's right in front of you, and it already sets the day up so that in your mind you've already created those affirmations, and you already know what you're going to do to achieve that success.
That's great. In fact, one of the things I've heard from some of these very high successful people is the first thing that they do not do is pick up their iPhones. Don't start scrolling. It's like open up the curtains and see the sunshine, or look at your affirmations and gratitude. So that's something I've noticed also that high successful people do is they're looking for gratitude and positive affirmations long before they pick up that phone and start scrolling.
100%, 100%.
So out of everything that you've heard from these millionaires, have you actually changed something that you do in your day-to-day life?
That's a great question, Zelda. And I really like that because I am in the process of learning as well.
Don't stop learning, okay?
Yes.
It never stops.
Never stop learning, right? And having this podcast on it helps the audience learn, and it helps me learn in the process as well. One of the things that I applied, and I've heard this, through a bunch of, different guests that I've had on, but this one helps find your peace, and this one helps you find that sense of security in yourself so that you are avoiding, just burning out, and, making sure that you are in a state of calm. And what I do is I've started going out on, walks by myself, either it's by myself or with my dad, because my dad also loves to go on walks. But I prefer doing it by myself just because it's a sense of solitude that brings me a lot of peace and calms down my brain so that I'm not, my brain isn't going all over the place and going completely haywire. But those are things walking around my neighborhood, and I prefer to do it in the evening because I believe that at the time that you do it really matters a lot. Because if I were to do it at 12 in the middle of my work day, it depends on the person, really. Like if it really does help them a lot at the middle of the day, just to take 10 minutes to give themselves that peace of mind, then they can absolutely go for it. But I want to make sure that I'm completely done with my day, my work, and all the things that I need to do. So then I have nothing to worry about, and all I'm focusing on is just cooling down and resetting. And I either do that around my neighborhood, or I like to go to the beach. The beach is a wonderful place for me just because of the breeze, the nice ocean, and, seeing, other people having fun around the beach. So I
It's
really
not
think,
work. Always thinking about how I'm going to make a buck. We got to go to and get some beach time in there.
yeah, yeah. And not just some beach time, but really so I can calm my system down, really regulating myself. Because again, with young people, this is not something that is normal because
Right.
a lot of them, when they are growing up, especially in school, it is something that is not really taught to them. They're not really taught how to regulate their emotions and to calm themselves down when it's needed. So that's why I prioritize that, because I learned that, taking some time to yourself, really goes a long way.
Yes. It's a reset. So you talk about teenagers needing to save early. So why is that so important? And how do you teach them or talk to them about saving early so that they can have a secure future?
Absolutely. Because being young is really, it's an advantage for us. And if it's an advantage if you use it the right way, you could start at 15 or 16 compared to starting at 30, 31. That is a huge advantage, and it's a huge head start. And a lot of people need to realize that people, are more willing to, give you the advice when you're young. They're sharing your story and help you out. And starting young, you can take more risks and you can try things out without overthinking. That's because time is your superpower. Superpower. That's your greatest, most valuable asset, because you have time on your side. Because the biggest mistake is waiting until you're older to start, when starting early is the real advantage, and that's being
I love how you say, Sahil. To me, one of the best things you just said was, because when you're young, you can afford it. You can take risks that you can't take when you're older. Start saving early. So is there some piece of advice that these people have that you've interviewed that you've really taken to heart and you've gone hard into for saving for your future or for building the future? What does your future even look like?
Well, that's a good one.
In your head, anyway. In your head, how does it look?
Well, my future for me is, and this is a question that I ask on the podcast as well, which is, what does financial freedom mean to you? What does that look like to you personally? For me personally, financial freedom and true wealth is being able to do the things, being able to do what I want with the people I want and as often as I want. That's what it really means to me. And it's having the options. And I'm very lucky to have grown up in my family where my dad has shown me a little bit about what that's really looked like. We were growing, because he's put in the work. We were able to go to Disney World over 200 times growing up, as me and my sister were very little. So my dad really
Feel bad for your dad.
Oh,
He had to go there 200 times.
no, I wouldn't say it was bad at all. I think he definitely enjoyed it along with us. But, he wanted to give us the experience, and he wanted to show us that it's possible. It's a huge thing. There is not a lot of people believe that lifestyle is possible.
Yeah.
But I was lucky enough, and I'm very grateful that my dad showed me that it's possible. So I'm actively pursuing, with the training from my dad and with the help from him and being under his wing, I'm actively pursuing that version of financial freedom and that true wealth, because I know it is possible now.
There you go. So what do you think that people in their 40s, 50s, maybe even in their 60s can learn from someone your age about building wealth?
So for young people speaking to, the older audience, I mean, we need to give them time. We are asking for, your grace, and we are asking for a little bit of slack because, you know, with young people, we tend to get that glare sometimes because not a lot of them believe that, oh, the young generation, growing up, because obviously with us, we have grown up in a different age compared to, you, for example, Zelda. So
Right.
you've
You
grown
were
up in
born with a computer in your hand.
pretty much, yeah. And I'd say we have, you know, much different minds today. I'm not trying to say that we're absolutely better than, people who are, in their older phase of life, but I'm saying that to give young people a chance because for the young people that actually do have the drive and want to pursue that success, they will show it. They will take that action. And because I see a lot of young people who are really taking action. Like for example, there's this kid in my area. He goes to a school near me, and he's constantly he's on it. He was like, hey. He's taking action like, hey, how do I learn about money? What does this mean? He has a job already because he wants to build that financial independence for himself. And he's actively trying to make sure that he's learning something new, and he's always reading books as well. So, with young people in mind and older people and what their perspective should be, is just they have their own version achieving success. And what I mean by that is we have a lot of new tools at our hand, and because we grew up with these tools at our disposal, and we are like very tech savvy. We understand the technology and we know how to use it. And a lot of young people are using it to their advantage by doing social media marketing, all these sorts of things online and on the internet. And so that them taking on that success, the real ones will show. The real young entrepreneurs and the ones that aspire to be great, the real ones will show. But, we need a little bit of the grace from, the older generation to see like, hey, we can do it. It is possible. We're growing up in a different age. Some things are just, it's not gonna be as familiar. And it's gonna take a little bit of time to get used to that.
So I'm going to challenge you with something. It's not on my papers. So what you're saying, I have this conversation with people all the time. Usually it's the millennials, okay? So I'm going to go younger than millennials and get to your age group. So while you are asking for the grace of the older generations for you to have patience, I'm going to flip that script and say the younger generations need to have some grace for the older generations and not poo-poo our ideas and our wisdom that we've already worked through and push us aside when you feel like you've stepped into your own. Make sense?
Yeah.
A lot of people who are my age feel that they've gotten to a point in life where we're getting close to retirement type age. I'll never retire, but we're at that point, and the younger generations dismiss us. So I'm just flipping that switch for you to remember one day.
Well, that's a great point, Zelda. And I definitely think, it's not something one-sided. I would definitely agree that, it can go one way or the other. And so,
yeah, I love this. I love that you said that because it's true. It's like you have to have patience on both sides of the fence there. It's great. I love that. So what do you do on days when you don't feel motivated?
what do I do on days I don't feel motivated?
Those the beach days?
Sometimes when I don't feel motivated, I don't let it get to me. I don't want to let it get to my head. And how I sort of do that is engage in activities, and I'm a runner. I'm an athlete. And so a lot of that surrounds every day I'm always exercising and I'm working out. And so a lot of it comes from movement. If I don't feel motivated, initially, if I don't naturally feel motivated that day, I'm going to do something that will motivate me. So, for example, that might be if I get up in the morning and I'm just like, I feel sluggish. One thing that I'm working on right now is abs, doing ab workouts. And so I'm in my room and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do an ab workout now because I need to get my body moving. And I want to get my body moving. Two, I'm working on something that, that'll make me feel good about myself.
That's
And,
great.
and then number three, it'll bring the motivation because then my mind is in that mode of like, all right, we're doing something active, and now we're getting into that space of all right, now it's time to get things done. Now, of course, it's going to be different for everyone, but for me, since I'm an athlete and a runner, exercise is just naturally something that helps get me moving. I also love listening to music. That's just
Okay.
something that.
Well, that's always a good one. So you have this podcast, you interview lots and lots of people. I know you have a huge audience. How do you approach or how do you get your guests to say yes? Because I mean, do they look at you and go, look at this is just some kid, or how do you get them to say yes?
So the way that I've done it, and starting out, I was very lucky to have in my journey, I have my sister and my dad. They're more successful than me and they're more successful in what they do. So they've already built up a large network and a large base of connections. And how I did that, because they have built these connections, for example, my dad he has tons and tons. So what I did was, because he has a large base, a large network, it makes it a little bit easier and already builds a little bit of trust between
Right.
that other person because, oh, hey, it's just his son, you know, I shouldn't, worry too much about him.
It's about
And
connections, right?
yes.
It's like you have
And
the
this is
connections.
this is the success through the connections. And so just having these mutual connections and reaching out to people who in my circle of people that my family already knows, I was able to, hey, with that guest that, I had a mutual connection with because maybe they knew my dad, I'd be like, hey, who do you know? Who do you know who would really benefit and be a great fit for this podcast? And because it's a loop there and it's a cycle of like, because that guest is referring me to a person and reach out to that referral saying like, hey, X so and so thought of you and said you'd be a great fit. There's already a little bit of, trust there. So I'm not completely reaching out entirely cold. And
Right.
it's just a loop and a loop there and it's a cycle. And that's where it really builds that momentum and it'll keep the guests coming. Now, in an opportunity where this really brought an amazing interview with someone is that this was a connection that my mom had, and I reached out to her and I wanted to invite her onto my podcast. She politely declined, but she was very kind and generous enough to refer me to a couple of people who she thinks that would be a great fit to feature on the podcast. And one of them, his name is Zoltan Nagy. He's from Hungary, Budapest, and she gave me his profile and I found out he's an owner of one of the best bars in the world. And I was, astounded to say the least that I had the opportunity to connect with someone like that, who was an owner of one of the best bars in the world. I invited him. He was more than happy to join, and we had a great conversation. The episode's up, Zoltan Nagy and how, built one of the best bars in the world. And so just right there, that helped me realize that these connections through these opportunities of podcasting and in the podcasting world, it's opened up so many doors and I've got to make a lot of great connections and meet a lot of huge successful people.
That is awesome. So can you tell our audience, who of all these listeners, if they want to reach out to you, they want to find you, listen to your podcast, how can they connect with you?
Well, they can connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook. It's just my name, Saahil Baxi, Saahilbaxi. You can reach out to me through my email, and it's just my first and last name, Saahil Baxi 2022 at gmail.com. And I'm also on Instagram as well. And it's just, again, it's my name, Saahil Baxi. And that's where you can find
we'll
me.
put it in the notes as well.
Okay, sounds
We'll
good.
Put it there. We'll put it there. So I have one final signature question that I ask all my guests. You've really already answered it, but maybe you can come up with a new one that we haven't heard yet, a story. Can you share a story of how either an opportunity presented itself to you because of a connection that you had, or maybe you opened up an opportunity for someone else because of someone that you knew?
Oosh. Well, I think unfortunately, I already
you
used
did.
my, I
Your
unfortunately,
mother.
I unfortunately used my best one, but let me try and bring it back a little bit. I think a good connection that I had. Now, to preface it a little bit, I am a runner, so this connection that I got, he is sort of like a stress professional. Has like a stress doctor. He helps you find, he guides you through relieving the stress and finding healthy habits to bring that down and to make sure that you're guiding through it in a healthy manner. So his name is Dr. Terry Lyles. And because I have my personal virtual assistant who helped reach out to him for me. And when he got back to me, he was, eager to hop on. And me and him had a really good podcast interview conversation. And we had a great post-interview conversation after. Because he's worked with a lot of race car, like NASCAR drivers. He's worked with a lot of athletes, sprinters, runners, a lot of these different sport professional athletes and people who are big in sports. And so we had a really good conversation because his goal is to ease your mind and ease your body so that they all work as one. And just having that connection right there as an athlete and as a runner, just knowing that I have someone right there in my network, if I ever wanted to reach out to him and just like, hey, you know what? I'm struggling with this. I've been feeling really stressed lately around my exercising and my running. And here's what happened. What can I do? And so just having that door open, knowing that that door is going to be open because, again, I built that connection there and from the help of my assistant, it's
That's
never
great.
been easier.
Hey, there you go. There you go. Your virtual assistant helped you out. That's awesome. We're pretty much at the end of the hour here. And I just wanted to remind our audience that if you enjoyed the show, be sure you click subscribe or follow so that you never miss an episode because we release a new one every single Tuesday of the week. So remember that success, it doesn't happen in isolation. It happens because of the connections that we have. And today, connections are the currency and they really are your power move. So I'm Zelda Greenberg, your host of Success Through Connections. And until next week, this is Zelda signing off. So I'll see y'all next week with a new episode of Success Through Connections.